Hi class, it's Bill and we are back with, oh gosh, getting toward the end of our videos on this sample project. I've run way long on these, but I'm also having fun and I hope you're having fun. I hope you're having a good review, maybe learning a few new things. So there's a lot here, but hopefully fun and useful. So let's talk a little bit about JavaDoc. Is it useful? Why do we do it? Etc. First of all, yes, the quick answer is yes, it's necessary and useful. I think we can agree that for future readers, which can be you, right? 6 months from now or a year from now, this code is going to look unfamiliar to you, right? It's going to look foreign. So I think we can agree that that is generally acceptable statement that we should give a little bit of a clue as to the context of what's going on. We should make it life a little bit easier for our readers, right? So very common things like, putting some general information about what this class is for, putting a little bit of description about what each method is supposed to do, right? Give a little bit of context so that your reader understands what you were trying to do, what your purpose was. So, and then things like parameters, like, yeah, you have some little things maybe to explain about the parameters and laying out the rules of what you expect in these parameters. That all seems like just generally acceptable, good documentation practice. So here's the news. JavaDoc asks you to do exactly that. Right? It doesn't ask you to do a stupid level of detail. It simply asks you to do the documentation that you should do anyway as a good citizen of the world. And the other thing that's cool about it is what can be created from JavaDoc notation is the exact kind of documentation that Java has for itself. You will see that when you look at your JavaDoc, if you compile it and look at the HTML that comes out of it, they look exactly like the Java API references, which is by design. You want your stuff to be readable, and of course the other cool thing is that clients of your code, remember we're writing supplier code 99% of the time, maybe 90% of the time at least. Suppliers of your code shouldn't have, or clients of your code should not have to look at your code to understand it. So what JavaDoc does is there's a compiler that extracts all of the JavaDoc and some relevant stuff out of the signatures of each method and creates this HTML. Clients of your code can look at the HTML and not have to look at your code. Nobody wants to read somebody else's code when they don't have to, right? They have all the documentation they need via JavaDoc. So the quick answer here is this is very important, right? JavaDoc is something that's standard. You should just learn to do it, and you should learn to do what I would call full JavaDoc. And full JavaDoc requires a little bit more like descriptions of instance variables, so that's okay. So we will, we will do some experiments with this. We will show you what this, how to write these things properly and talk about some of the common issues. And so there are some slides that you can follow here that if you're in class you can see them, but let's just jump into the code and let's write some JavaDoc. And let's also learn how to do an important thing that we can have Java compiler tell us whether we're missing something in our JavaDoc, right? So how does it work? Well, the first thing is we have to understand that comments for JavaDoc are different than comments normally, right? This is a normal Java comment, block comment. This is a JavaDoc comment. So what we should put here is right before the beginning of the class, and notice not above the import statement, because the document compiler needs to see that this and this are close together. There can be a space, but there can't be other stuff. There can't be an import, or else it doesn't know this comment goes with this. So you should put these in proximity, right? They need to be right next to each other. So what we do here is for each of these, and actually I want to go over to BankAccount, not here, right? I'm gonna focus more on BankAccount. So here at the top of the class, I'm going to start by doing this, and I'm going to describe the class, right? Represents a single account at a bank. What you don't want to do here is get into too much detail. Don't start getting into data types. Don't start getting into the minutia. You want this to be a general description of the thing that is not going to have to be changed every time you tweak something in the code. These are all intended to be general, right? General things. So then another common thing is not only do you do this, but you put a tag that says who the author is, right? So I'm going to put my name, and then I'm going to put a version tag. Now, these two things may be superfluous in the real world because you may have a source management system that keeps track of this stuff, but we'll do it for now, and then if you find that at work they have something else that's better that supplants this, then certainly you can leave those things out. But as a good general rule, let's do this. Again, these are going to be picked up by the document compiler. You can't make these things up, right? Don't make up tags. The tags that are there are specific, so don't try to add to them. Spell them correctly and use them this way. And again, this needs to be right above here. Space is okay, but don't try to put imports or anything else, right? So that's the comment that we should put on the class. Now, each one of the constructors and methods should also get a JavaDoc description. The nice thing is IntelliJ is smart about it, and not only does it make room for that description, which is the constructor for a maybe just constructors all we need to say. Again, don't get into data types, don't get into any other details. If you just have one constructor, well, this is the constructor, right? So that's perfect. Then for each of the parameters, they need to have, and again, these can't be bunched. This is just one @param for each one of these things. And this is the account owner name. And this is the account identification number, right? And this is the initial account balance, right? So again, general descriptions. Don't talk about data types. The compiler, the document compiler can pick that stuff up. So don't get into too much detail. Be general, right? Now, the other thing to notice here is we have a precondition. Some people believe that what we would do here is put an @throws tag, but that is not what we would do in modern usage here. Don't put an @throws because no client is going to put a try catch around their bank account constructor call. That would be kind of ridiculous to see in code. So if you don't expect the client to put a try catch around the call to your constructor, don't put @throws here. Instead, just describe what needs to happen in your @param tags. Must not be null or empty, right? Identification number, right? Must not be null or empty. Account balance must be non-negative, right? Or must not be negative. Whatever you want to say, right? But just describe the requirements there. When the client looks at the documentation and sees those requirements, they understand that if they violate them, something bad's going to happen. They would expect to have an illegal argument exception or something similar. Does that make sense? So we don't need @throws here. In fact, I don't know that there'll be many cases in the entire course where it would make sense to use an @throws in modern JavaDoc usage. Okay, so that's the idea here, and again, IntelliJ helped us get this started. Again, here we can just come up here to the beginning and put /**, and it automatically got this ready, and I'm going to say retrieves the account owner. And then it puts the @return. Now, if it's a void method or like the constructor, you don't put @return because there isn't a stated return value, right? But here there is one, and that is account owner. Yes, you do still have to put the description, and you still have to put @return. You have to do both. Yes, that is common, correct usage because they go a slightly different place in the documentation. So you need both things, right? And down we'll go. We'll do the same thing here, /**, and this is retrieves the account identification number, and @return. Notice that @return you do not put an identifier, right? @param has an identifier because that's something that makes sense here. It's part of the description, part of the signature. It's actually technically not part of the signature, but it's part of what they're going to see when they use the thing, right? So that they understand the context. Return doesn't have that because they never see this, right? They don't see it or use anything about what you did internally. So return just has a description, right? And that is the account identification number, right? So here on get balance, same thing. We're going to do /**, and I'm going to say retrieves the current account balance and return current account balance. All right. So most of these are kind of templated. This one updates the account owner, right? param owner, new account name, whatever, updated account owner. Okay. So on you go, and in this one again here, must not be null or empty. And didn't we already, how did we end up with this? I thought we had already gone back and fixed these things, but we can fix this now. Utility verify object not null. We can fix this while we're here. Utility.verify string not empty, owner, right? We fixed some things up along a line and we forgot, and we actually had a missing precondition here, so that's good, right? All right, so then we'd want to go make sure our tests actually did these things. We may not have a test that covers some of these things, so we may need to go back and run our code coverage again, but that's the idea, okay? And so again, we go on, onward, and I think that's anything else interesting there? No, I think that's good. For deposit, right? Deposits money into the account. Amount is amount to deposit, must not be negative. Right? The return is the updated account balance. We can now copy this JavaDoc from here because it's going to be very similar here. This is going to be withdraws money from the account and amount to deposit or withdraw. Withdraw must not be negative, and then must not be more than the current balance. All right, and it returns the updated balance. That's good. And then the toString, what do we say here? We can't say much. We can say returns a string representation of the object. All right, return string representation. Don't get into the details. What does it have? It has two strings and a whatever. Nope. Just give a general broad description of these things. All right. So now we've done a pretty good job. We're not actually finished, but we're pretty good. And now we might have seen that we actually missed some tests. So on the bank account test, set owner, we have this thing about the set, and then where is our exception tests? Here's set owner preconditions. We only did the null one, right? So we actually need another one of these, and that is we're going to try to pass an empty string, right? So some of these things may need to be updated to make sure that we are 100% good. Also, these things, this also brings to mind, hey, we're passing null. What about empties? So we may go back and forth and actually see, hey, wow, we looked for null, but we didn't look for, or we may not have looked for everything we needed to, right? So we may go back and forth. I don't think we're quite done here, but let's leave it. All right, so go back to bank account. Okay, now we may think we're done, but one of the other things that needs to happen here is each one of these things needs to have a description. So every instance variable also is going to have a description. So this is the account owner's name, right? You can make it on one line if you'd like. I like that, but the other problem is that Java's going to fix that. If you do a reformat command, it's going to go and change those, right? So account identification number, right? And yes, you have to do one for each one. To be complete in your JavaDoc, you have to have one, and that's the account balance here, right? So there you go. Now we think we've been complete. How do we find out, right? How do we make sure? And so one of the things that we can do here, we could go look at the documentation, but how do we know? So one of the things I'm going to show you is that you come to File Settings, and in File Settings, you're going to go down to Build Execution Deployment, Java Compiler, and then notice you're going to add this. We're going to talk about this separately, but I'm going to show you here. You can do this so that all future projects will have this, which is what I've done. But if we zoom in on this, let me go and copy this and paste it into a notepad window so you can see it a little bit more clearly maybe, right? Part of this is checking for raw types and unchecked warnings, which we'll talk about separately, but this part says make sure, run the document linter, that's an extra layer of checks, and look for all types of problems. Right? So now when I build this project, right, and the easiest way to do this, you can do it one at a time, or you can just say build, rebuild project. You can see now that if you bring up the build tab, you can see that Bank has a whole bunch of warnings about documentation because we didn't put comments, right? So there's a whole bunch of JavaDoc problems with Bank because we didn't do it yet. And here, wow, it has even in BankAccount, well, that's BankAccount test, we don't care. Notice that BankAccount is not actually listed here. There are no problems with BankAccount because we were very thorough. But let's create a problem, right? Let's leave out one of these things and let's just misspell one of these, right? Now you can tell already in red that that's a problem, but just so you see, if you do rebuild project now, and you go to the build tab or the problems tab, either one, right? You will see here that the param name was not found, and it's in red. This is a big problem, right? So this will make you fix it before it even compiles the rest. So now let's build it again. I'm going to rebuild the whole project just to make sure. We'll look at the build tab and then we'll see again what's wrong. There's bank account. What's problem? There's no comment. We'll double click that. It'll take us to this line and then we go, oh, okay, we are missing that line. Okay, so then we know we have to go add that. So I recommend just rebuilding the whole project. You can also hit a magic key, what is it, Shift Control F9, that just runs this one file. Right, so you could do that to just test whether this one is okay. But now that we have our xlint all, right, dash xdoclint:all, you will see that now it'll keep you honest and make sure that everything makes sense. You have at returns where you should, at params where you should, the names match, you have comments where you should. Everything here I think will be double checked very nicely, and we might as well have that extra layer of confidence that we have done the right thing. All right, so I'm not going to go during this video and go back and do bank, but I think you can see what you'd need to do there based on what we've learned here. There will be slides that go over this stuff as well, but hopefully this is a good introduction. You understand why JavaDoc is necessary. I ask you to do it because it's a good habit to get into. It's good for you. It's good for, for your experience to know how to document your code in a more professional way. And so I will ask you to do this in a limited sense on your projects, right? I'll usually ask you to do 1 or 2 classes, not necessarily everything that you write. So that is your introduction to JavaDoc. I hope that's helpful. And I will do this real quickly so that you can pause if you want to take screenshots, pause the video. Here's another page with some notes in case you're not in class with me and you want to pause the video here. And then there's some pages of examples. Again, pause. Here's another one, and another. And there you go. So thanks for watching these videos. I think we're maybe finally at the end of our sample project. So there's been a lot of information here. I hope it's great information, either review or some new stuff that will help you as you go through this quarter's projects to find your way. So thanks for watching these, and we will see you in a future video. Thank you.